Hello and welcome, Dragon Ball fans, to the Cyber Dragon Ball. I'm your host, Steve Kamehameha, and I am beyond thrilled to relaunch this show and dive back into this electrifying world of Dragon Ball Z, Kai, and Dragon Ball Super. Whether you're a seasoned Saiyan or a newbie just discovering the power of the Dragon Balls, this podcast is your one-stop shop for everything Dragon Ball. From iconic battles and character arcs to the latest news and fan theories, I've got you covered.
Even our fused might isn't enough to win!
So in this inaugural episode, I'll be reintroducing myself and sharing the story behind this podcast birth, or I should say rebirth. We'll be exploring my lifelong passion for Dragon Ball and the moments that kind of define my fandom within it and why I decided to bring the Cyber Dragon Ball back with a fresh twist. So as we endeavor into this podcast and as we kind of learn more, the reason that I brought this puppy back is because, one, I used to run a Dragon Ball Z website called the Cyber Dragon Ball. And it's funny enough that it's kind of the idea behind this podcast and the fact that I was going to do it years ago, right around the time that Dragon Ball Z Kai came out. The main reason I'm coming back to it now is because I've gotten into recently Dragon Ball Super. And what's special to me about Dragon Ball Super is the fact that I used to go home and watch Dragon Ball Z on Toonami years and years ago on Cartoon Network. And honestly, I used to get home and record it. I used to rush home to see it. It was like one of those staples for the evening for me every single night that it was on. And when I had to start working is when I kind of fell out of Dragon Ball Z, sadly, around the time that the Buu saga kind of started. And I'd also kind of lost interest along the way somewhat, but I still kind of cared about it. I watched it from the start of Dragon Ball Z on through, and I know that Dragon Ball Z Kai is slightly altered, slightly different, new voice cast. Like I saw it before Sean Schemmel was Goku, and it was Ian James Corlett who played Cheetor on Beast Wars. And then there was another actor that also played Goku through the majority of the series. And I remember watching it with that actor, and his name was Peter Clemes. He was supposed to go to a Greeley, Colorado anime kind of convention this last September. And sadly, it got canceled for whatever reason. I was kind of looking forward to going there and kind of picking his brain and getting involved with that. However, it's funny because there have been a number of voice actors that have played Goku in Dragon Ball Z. In the English dub of the Dragon Ball Z anime by Saban and Funimation, Goku was originally voiced by Ocean Group voice actor Ian James Corlett, again, Cheetor. But he stayed for the first season and then left. So Goku's replacement was Ocean Group voice actor Peter Clemes for season 2. Clemes also voiced Goku for the original English dub versions of the first 3 Dragon Ball Z films, which is why there was a lot of synergy there. However, when Saban parted ways with Funimation, the role was recast and Sean Schemmel then voiced Goku from season 3 to the end of the Dragon Ball Z saga. Sean Schemmel also voiced Goku for the redubbed episodes originally voiced by Ian James Corlett and Peter Clemes. The anime films, the redubbed films originally voiced by Peter Clemes, and the Funimation version of Dragon Ball GT. Sean also voiced Teen Goku in the final saga of Dragon Ball. So they gave him, I do love this aspect that they gave Sean Schemmel the role, and then on top of it, they had him redub everything. So it was all a unified voice instead of all these different voice actors. So he also got to play in Dragon Ball Z Kai, where he reprises his role as Goku, which is basically a remaster of Dragon Ball Z. And it's funny because there have been other dubs of of the show. And so Peter Clement still voiced Goku in the Ocean Group version of the DBZ anime for European and Canadian broadcast. However, he stopped voicing Goku during the Cell Games saga in order to focus on his career as a comedian. And Kirby Morrow then voiced Goku until the end of the series for the Ocean Group version. I find it funny that there's so many different versions. There's the Funimation, there's the Ocean Group, there's the Blue Water dub, there's the current one, which is Crunchyroll. And so in the Blue Water dub of Dragon Ball, Teen Goku was voiced by Jeffrey Watson, and the dub version of Dragon Ball GT for European and Canadian was voiced by Jeremiah Yerk, and Steve Bloom played in Goku in Dragon Ball GT Final Bout, the video game. And it's just kind of goes on and on and on. So I also want to preface this with the fact that Goku also was played by Sean Schemmel in Dragon Ball Super. And honestly, I've loved Super. Dragon Ball GT was peak Dragon Ball, though. It definitely was. And I loved it for what it was. I learned all the things about it. I had a website. I ran it for years until it just didn't kind of make sense to do anymore. And so I just kind of ended up in this point where Dragon Ball kind of fell off the face of the earth for me. And my favorite characters were always, like, I liked Krillin, I liked Piccolo, I liked Vegeta, I liked Master Roshi. I liked all these different characters in the show, and they're all likable in different ways, different voices, different personalities. It's very fun to go back and reminisce over the show. And it kind of boils down to the fact that my favorite two are Goku and Vegeta, always will be. I liked the fusions they turned into of Gogeta and Vegito. I liked that they kind of mainstreamed them back into Dragon Ball Super. They explained the Potaris earrings better. They explained the fusion dance. They kind of unified all of this stuff. And it's interesting because the timeline goes Dragon Ball Z, or Dragon Ball Z Kai, up to just after the Buu saga, before Goku comes back in his blue costume as like kind of the trainer for the tournament that he kind of ends the show on, fighting Oob. And so there's this span of time of 10 years. However, it's really strange because they don't act like there's like any kind of magical power up for these guys at the end of Z Kai or Z. And Dragon Ball Super takes place like about 7 years into that time span of them waiting for everything to kind of happen. And they still haven't evolved or aged far enough to hit that quote unquote 10-year gap between Boo and Oob. And so it's kind of funny that they jump into that time period, because Goku and everybody else ends up with power-ups. You end up with Gohan with Beast Gohan, Piccolo with Orange Piccolo, Goku and Vegeta going to the Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan Blue. And you've got all these other deities and things in there. And then we get Dragon Ball Daima, which is starting to air now. Or I should say the English dub will start airing in November. The original, or the subbed version, will be on Netflix actually in the near future. So we're ending up with this point where it takes place directly after Dragon Ball Super, but yet before the end of Dragon Ball Z. So it's kind of muddied the waters quite a bit in here. And then Dragon Ball GT is considered just not canon and kind of a throwaway, even though there's some cool stuff to it. It really doesn't fit the continuity or the storyline, because Daima is kind of doing what GT did, but better. So I'm interested to jump on board with this podcast. I'm interested to see kind of what direction we end up going in. And honestly, I can't wait to see where Dragon Ball Super continues when they pick back up the dub. I can't wait to see Daima and the last bit that Akira Toriyama did before he passed. And so I think Dragon Ball is going to be in a little bit of a transitionary period once it comes back on Super. However, I'm geeked, I'm excited, and I'm looking forward to covering this podcast. I'm going to start out with covering either I'm going to do episodic kind of breakdowns in multiple clumps, like we've done like with the Beast Unleashed or some of the other podcasts, like 1 to 5 episodes, or 1 to 3 or something, just depending. Or I'll chunk together bigger aspects or of the different sagas and kind of break the parts up of the sagas. Because sometimes there's filler episodes, sometimes there's kind of throwaways, sometimes they drag things on. I have never seen Dragon Ball Z Kai all the way through, so this is kind of me experiencing it for the first time, but also revisiting Dragon Ball Z. As I was familiar with Dragon Ball Z and I grew up with Dragon Ball Z and I remember all the super long story plots, I'm looking forward to seeing this faster paced remaster of the saga here on out. So let me know what you guys think of this podcast, because honestly, I'm super geeked for this. I'm looking forward to having you guys join me on this adventure as we jump into some of my favorite Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super moments, discussing what makes this series so legendary and, some exciting topics and hopefully guests in the lined up, for the future. So grab your senzu beans, guys, power up your scouters, and join me on this thrilling journey through the Dragon Ball universe as we hit our power levels well over 9,000. Let's go Super Saiyan together right here on the Cyber Dragon Ball.
Next time on the Cyber Dragon Ball, Steve Kamehameha will discuss the Raditz Saga. Only on the Geekcast Radio Network.